Happy New Comic Book Day, geeks, and welcome back to issue 53 of the Script Heroes podcast.
The show where we bring you comic news, book reviews, and industry blues. My name is Joseph Jasonowski, and I am the writer of Janitor Hero, Cunning Carly, and the Cryptoverse.
And I'm Katie Markham, scripter of the Rusty Robot Country Club and Ghostwriter Extraordinaire. We have some absolutely radical books to talk about today. We've got Batgirl, number 2, Long Cold Winter, number 1, Prairie Gods, number 3, and The Hour of the Wolf. Ow!
Is what she was saying there.
Yes.
If you don't speak dog. But yeah, a little bit of a shorter week than we've had the past couple weeks, at least. But if you enjoy any of those reviews or anything else in today's episode, you can follow the pod on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, all the handles Script Heroes Pod. Find me personally on all those same socials at JJAZ1111.
And I'm everywhere at Katie Markham Pro.
And now, let's get into the news. Okay, so we're going to start off with a piece of news that I'm not sure Katie's going to be quite as jazzed as I am about, but
I've been
saw
told
this
I won't
morning.
be mad about it, though.
No,
just
if you were
not
mad about this,
care.
it'd be real weird. Yeah, that'd be real weird if you were mad about this. But I was real excited when I saw this morning. So it was revealed this morning that Robert Kirkman and Ryan Ottley are teaming up for a new series set in the Invincible universe, returning to the book that they did together for so long, and it is going to be Invincible Universe Battle Beast.
Oh my god, no way! This is so exciting! It is actually super rad that it's Kirkman and Ottley teaming up again. That's super fun. We love the OG team.
I was just thinking, like, the other day, I was like, I really enjoy Void Rivals, but I'm a little disappointed that Kirkman's doing nothing else. Because he's, like, the creator-owned king. He was doing, like, multiple books for so long, and it was like, we don't have that now. And then I saw this news this morning, and I was like, holy shit. Like, this is crazy, because one, Ryan Ottley has been doing Marvel books for the longest time now, so crazy to have him come back. And two, Battle Beast is one of my favorite Invincible characters, as I think he is for a lot of people. And the cool thing is this actually, I don't know if it was a multi-part story because I am not great at picking up all the Skybound X's, but I had, in one Skybound X, there was a Battle Beast story from the two of them, maybe 2 years ago. And I don't know if there were more parts to it than just that, but that seems to be the beginning of this story, because this is, they're saying this is going to be a prequel set between his first appearance in Invincible, which was in issue 19, and when he shows back up later in the series in, like, the 50s. I don't remember the specific issue that he shows back up in, but it's, like, in the 50s. He was gone for a long time, and kind of the vibe you get from that Skybound X story is he's very disappointed after Invincible did not put up a good fight, so he leaves Earth, and he goes to this like group of people who he had intimidated on their spaceship into, telling him where he could find somebody that would be good competition. They told him Earth. He does not think that they told him the truth, so he murders them all. And then he is on their ship, and this ship's AI reveals itself because all of the people on there are dead now. And it's like basically asks him about why he does what he does, and he's like, oh yeah, so my world, I turned it into a utopia by, like, killing all the bad people, but I need to fight, and I know that I would destroy my home world if I stayed there. So I have to venture out to find somebody who will extinguish my flame. So essentially he wants to find somebody who will kill him, so he won't, continue to kill people. And so the AI, and I love this, basically tells him, like, I will help you on your quest to find somebody good enough to battle you, but I have to be honest with you. I loved the members of the ship, so my goal will be to get you killed. And Battle Beast goes, like, our desires are aligned then. And it's just like, oh my god, that's so cool.
I appreciate you have answered the question that I was going to slip in there of who is this man. But no, that's super duper rad. That you gave me the highlights there.
Yeah, I love Battle Beast. It's one of those things. I love the concept of, like, the warrior just goes around, like, looking for a good fight. It's great.
Also, question. Did Ottley finish Invincible? How much of Invincible did he do?
99%. He comes in at issue... It's either 7 or 8. I think it's 8. The last issue Walker did is the giant spoilers if you've not read or watched any of Invincible, but if you've read or watched any of it, you will know this. The last issue Walker did is the issue where Omni-Man is revealed to have killed the Guardians of the Globe. It's their death issue with the nice splash page of Omni-Man at the end, like standing over them. That's the last issue Walker did. He comes in and he does like a few issues here and there throughout the rest of the series. I'm guessing when Ottley just like need a little break or whatever. I was not following the book as it came out. I read everything later, so I don't know the full story there. But Walker does a few issues here and there. But Ottley from issue again, it's 7 or 8. I don't know the exact number. He does 99% of that to, I think it's 154 is the final issue. So
love that.
Yeah, Ottley did a ton, and he is the co-creator of Battle Beast because Battle Beast did not show up until after Walker was off the series.
That's super rad. That's awesome.
Yeah, I am so excited. Also, like, there's no issue count on this, so I think it's an ongoing, or at least not like a straight. It's not gonna be like a 4 or 6 issue miniseries. Like, it seems like
hell
it's
gonna
super
exciting.
And I am really excited because again, I did not read Invincible as it came out, so this is gonna be my first real opportunity to read an Invincible as it's coming out. So
love that. He's gonna be a community boy.
Yeah, this is very exciting to me. But yeah, I think I gave all the details I can give there. I don't know if there's anything else to share on this because it's very early in the process, except that it comes out in April, which is my birthday month, so that's also very fun.
It's coming out on his birthday.
I hope
Robert
so.
Kirkman
I don't know if
is hand delivering it to your home.
To my home, yeah. But yeah, Battle Beast is rad, so that should be super fun. And I'm really glad it's a prequel. And I'm not going to dive into all of the things that happen in Invincible that make me glad that it's a prequel and not, set later. In any case, we're going to jump over to the next bit of news that I think Katie might care a little bit more about. We're going to be talking about DC Comics. So, DC's been doing a lot of like outreach stuff to try to get new readers with like their compact comics, stuff like that. We've got another interesting thing here, which is that DC is now stocking issues at Dollar Trees across the country. So at
new issues.
So I'll get into it here. So at Dollar Trees across the country, you will be able to find polybagged issues from DC Rebirth. I'm guessing that's just what they had like extra
1,000 copies of.
Yeah, so you can get, I believe, just all the issue number 1s from DC Rebirth. They have 38. I think it is 38. We read all the number 1s, so I think it is 38 issues or something like that. It might be a couple more, because like Batman 89 number 1 is on here, which I don't think was in like the actual technical DC Rebirth. So there's, I think, a couple extra. There's also Batman and Scooby-Doo Mysteries number 1. 2 different versions of Batman and Scooby-Doo Mysteries number 1. I'm guessing from when they read.
Yeah, because they didn't do it as a part of Rebirth, but they recently relaunched it.
So it seems like both the original one and okay, I should say they're not all Rebirth. Because there's also Green Lantern War Journal number 1 here, which is there's Dawn. Wait, that doesn't make sense. I think they just wrote the wrong thing. I think it's DC Universe House Road and the Green Lantern Corps. But there's a few Dawn of DC titles here too. It looks like, but mostly Rebirth.
So I do think that's really fun.
Everything's number 1.
And a good idea. I do think it's rough not to have things beyond number 1, though. It
is. It seems though like it's just meant to grab people in, and also I don't know if it's at a Dollar Tree. Everything at Dollar Trees are $1.25, so you're getting a $5 issue for $1.25. So that's
for sure.
Nice.
I just think it's a little rough because as someone who loves libraries and did a majority of my early comic reading at the library. That's definitely a resource. Obviously, DC has all of their online resources. I'm worried that's not going to have great conversion if all you're getting is number 1 of a book.
That's fair. I think I would guess the idea is the hope that people grab it and then will look for the issue too. But yeah, you're right that's certainly more of a it's hard. I think I would guess that their concern is that issues beyond number 1 won't sell well in this
because I'm sure that they wouldn't, but I still feel like it's a little like if
I
what
wonder
they're
if just
trying
also they
to
don't have like the
capture,
stock for it, like because I'm
right?
guessing this is
Yeah,
just stuff
yeah.
that DC has like large extra stock of.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess my thing is like if the audience they're trying to capture with this is like, the I don't know, 12-year-old who has his
I think
pocket
that's the thing. I think
money,
it's meant to be like kids. Yeah, that'd be my
which is
guess.
all well and good, but I feel like then you need there to be like a kind of stream of accessible books for them.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I wonder if like they did like packs of like the first 3 issues of the
Mm-hmm.
series or something like that. Like I wonder if even that would be nicer. But I just
Because
think
I'm
it's
sure
cool
that
to
like
have
cost
some.
of goods
Yeah,
wise,
yeah,
DC handing out DC comics is not a big blip. Like with stuff that's already produced, already made, you know,
yeah.
even if
Well,
they're
that's like if they're
reprinting
doing
some stuff.
already made stuff. Like I'm wondering if they just don't have large excesses of the non-issue ones to where they
Mhm.
could do it in any large capacity.
That's
Uh,
fair. I think that it's something that will not have like a huge impact, unfortunately. Like I think that the compact editions are something that is really going to help people get into DC. This feels a little like DC clearing out a warehouse, you know?
Fair. I don't know. I feel like it's with the concerns that I think typically for especially children are that one, they aren't where children are, which makes it hard to get children in the comics, and two, that they are just too expensive for children under like the
Mhm.
modern thing. So I feel like this addresses both of those, and it, like the nice thing especially I'll say is like um also the other thing I will say because I'm just kind of registering this as I one
Yeah,
look at things and do is it is in theory, despite being number ones, there is some progression with some of these where they can get the Rebirth number one and then the issue number one from the same
that's
series,
fair.
and those are technically, in there. But the other thing I was gonna say is like there's like 15 Batman books, so it's not like the kids will at least
Mhm.
be able to like grab a bunch of
For
Batman books.
sure.
So
I
like
think the tricky thing is that
there's
with the
some.
way that the comics market has like changed since like the 50s, with things being so much less episodic,
I
the
understand why they're
idea of a
doing a lot
kid
of the
being able to
Rebirth issues
grab
though. Because like the actual
that's
Rebirth number ones are fairly like they are
fair.
setting
That's
things up, but
fair.
they're fairly like, here's what's happened to this character for the last like
Hmm.
however long. Here's everything you need to know about this character, and like here's your thing. But
That's
I
fair.
don't think your concern's unfounded. Like it's certainly you continue on your
Oh no,
concern there.
I was listening. Yeah, it's like I don't want to talk in circles, but it's like if all they can get is number one, then you're not really building an audience with that person. You know, like if they don't have new books to grab, like coming at it from a like comic store perspective, it's like if people are coming in and they don't have new books, they're just going to be looking at the same old books, and if it didn't grab their attention at one point, it's probably not going to grab their attention now, and like not giving them fresh stuff
Yeah,
to pick up.
I
I feel like
certainly I
is shooting them
certainly
in the foot.
don't think the intent, because it wouldn't make any sense. I don't think the intent is to get the same person at this multiple times. I don't think the idea is like, oh, the same kid's going to go to his Dollar Tree every week to get DC Comics. I think the idea is get a kid to see it at a Dollar Tree and hope that they buy a few things, and then, especially in like this market of like kids will see like a clip on
Yeah.
TikTok of a show and then look, where can I stream this show? Like maybe the
Hmm.
idea is they'll get issue one. Where can I read more of this
That's
series?
fair. That's very
DCUI.
fair.
Let me buy DCUI and I can read this entire Rebirth series. And then maybe you'll
That's
get a
fair.
kid like that. But no, I certainly I certainly don't think, and if it is their intent, then I agree with you that it's not going to like. There's no way that this is like a functional go to your Dollar Tree every week too. But I don't think that's the goal, because like they're certainly not profiting on selling comics at $1.25. Like you said, it's something more of
Hmm.
like clearing out stuff they already have. So I don't think it's meant to be like a long-term model. Like this is how we sell to this market, because the profit isn't there for that to be
Hmm.
how it works. But
But I
yeah,
think that it will be a cool thing to see if DC does this in the future with like, oh, if this pays out well, if people do buy the comics, there maybe it will be a thing where when they have excess stock, they will send stuff to a Dollar
yeah,
Tree, which I think will help with that problem of like, oh, if it's just this one batch of comics,
yeah.
kind of what do you do?
Well, I think the other reason, like my guess would be that they're going with a lot of the older stuff here. Though there's some, like there's the Dawn of DC Green Arrow. There's
Hmm.
the Dawn of DC. Obviously, I mentioned the Green Lantern War Journal, and there's a few others. Um, I think the idea, like the concern would be if it's like we're not going to go super old and we're going to do it consistently, is you might have people going like, why don't I just wait and I'll just buy a bunch of things at the Dollar Tree, when it's cheap versus buying stuff, brand new.
That's fair. Though, like you said, I don't know that they're courting the same audience as, like, a comic book store.
Yeah, but this stuff gets, if it became a thing that's like, oh, all of DC's books that become 2 years old, you can get for $1.25, like at Dollar Trees, that's certainly going to come out to the comic book market, and they will start grabbing those before children get a chance.
They're gonna do that anyway.
Oh, I mean, I think these are also, like, I think, like, a lot of these also the books that you remember, like, they were doing, like, Walmart 3-packs with a bunch of those books.
Yeah.
Like, I think they just have a ton of this fucking stock in it. So I think DC fans all have this. Like, that Batman Rebirth #1, there's, like, 8 of those in my closet, and I don't even know how they all got there. Like, Like,
I remember you and I, like, 3 years ago or some shit, I was looking through a bunch of my comics and I was, like, adding them to my, I don't know, one of those tracking websites or my spreadsheet or something.
Yeah.
And I had a Batman Rebirth #1, and I'm like, I can't find this fucking variant anywhere. And it was from one of those Walmart 3-packs, and they had just taken the cover of, like, Batman #3 and put it on Batman #1. So I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of, like, those weirdo things where it's like, yeah, we just put a kind of a coat of paint on these. Go.
It's very funny, but yeah. So I think, like, I don't think the things they're right now stocking with are going to be things that DC fans are like, we gotta get these for $1.25. Like, go get them. It's like, you've got these for the most part if you're a DC fan, or like you could have gotten these, like. But in any case, yeah, that's
those
the news
fools.
week, so.
You can just get them for $1 at your local half-price books.
Or you can dumpster dive if you know what day they throw things out, and then just get them for free.
That's illegal, Jason.
Is it?
When it's private dumpsters, yes. As someone who has had to shoo many a dumpster diver, there are no trespassing signs for a reason.
Dumpster divers, dumpster dive.
Jokes on them. There are never any comics at my store, because as soon as stuff that I think is neat goes to clearance, I'm like, I will buy those, please.
I remember you sending me a picture of comics you were going to throw out, and I was disgraced with the idea.
I did have to do a big old clear. I won't say this on the internet to hear. Let's just say I had to do a lot of editing when I went to my new store. There was a lot of back stock that was never gonna move.
Okay, well, let's get to books that are new and not gonna be $1.25 at half price books. Let's go to the pull list rec.
Welcome to the pull list rec. We are talking about 4 kick-ass books this week. We are talking about Batgirl #2, Prairie Gods #3, Hour of the Wolf #2, and A Long Cold Winter #1. But
you did the Awu thing again.
Look, leave me and my little wolf joke alone. I'm having fun.
Okay, I'm letting you have fun here.
But of course, that's not all we picked up this week. Jay, I need to hastily open my app to see what I picked up this week.
Yeah, I did it as you were saying that, yeah.
Oh, he was stalling. What are you picking up?
So, not much this week. I, of course, have Absolute Superman #2. #2? Yeah. Oh, we came out. That's what I should.
That was really last Wednesday.
Yeah.
Which is what we talked about on Saturday. We went through our absolute tier list, not tier list, our absolute
kind of recap, reviews, fantasy comic book, league, all of that good stuff. And then my only other book that we are not pulling this week is Night Watcher issue #4. So,
and that's with Jenica.
Yes, Jenica.
Turtle lore. It's starting to stick.
It's starting to stick. I talk about turtles so often, and it's finally starting to stick with Katie, especially as we are now reading 2 Turtles books. So
yes,
yeah.
I keep forgetting Mutant Nation is coming out, because the second one came out like 2 months after the first, or something ridiculous.
Honestly, I think there was the same thing between issue 1 and 2 of the new TMNT series. They had, like, at the beginnings of a lot of these runs, they had some weird gaps. They went through some big editorial changes too, so I think the publisher was just having some stuff, but they're back on track now. So yeah.
I also got Batman #155, The Batman and Scooby-Doo Mysteries #12, Uh,
Is that the last one? Are
are
they
they finishing
rebooting
it?
again after
That's so
that?
sad. It is the final issue. Tragic.
Yeah.
I don't
They'll
know if
probably
this
just
is
do another
actually
number one.
probably.
I'm sure it won't
Um,
actually end.
yeah. We love a jumping on point. Um, I don't know if Calvera PI number 2 is coming out this week, because I think number 1 came out last week. So unless Oni's being real weird. But Dick Tracy, number
Yeah, got it.
6. And Two-Face number 1.
Oh, okay.
Two-Face number
Why
1
did I
looked
think Two Face? Oh,
funky
yeah.
stylistically, so I'm excited to get my hands on it.
Yeah. You would pitch that as one of the potential book, but I was real excited to have only a 4-book week, so
That's
we
so
we kind
fair.
of didn't do that. So, but in any
Well,
case, Katie, order.
Order. Batgirl first.
Yes.
Then I'm going to say Long Cold Winter. Then Power of the Wolf. Then Prairie Gods.
Yep. Also, wild that we have 3 books from Mad Cave
Mad
this
Cave,
week.
right?
From Mad Cave week.
It's a
Um.
Mad Cave week. Where's.
Yeah.
Oh, it
Oh,
fell down.
Kitty's gone. Oh, she's
Descendant to
back.
Madness. Got a little Mad Cave bookmark. It's crinkled because I dropped
We'll
it.
see, we'll see you guys in the Batgirl review. Batgirl number 2, with Lady Shiva gravely wounded and Batgirl refusing to join her mother's cause. The two seek refuge in the unlikeliest of places while the mysterious unburied continue to hunt them, just as their deadly leader finally emerges from the shadows. Lives are at stake, but it wouldn't be a killer face-off without some casualties. The writer is Tate Brombell of Christopher Chaos, House of Slaughter, and Green Lantern Dark. The artist is Kishi Miyazawa of Miss Marvel, Spider-Gwen, and Silk. The colorist is the great Mike Spicer, and the letterer is Tom Napolitano. Katie, you're a big Cass fan. We both quite
Shame.
enjoyed the first issue. Why don't you
Accurate.
hit me up with your thoughts on issue 2, which has a rad cover? I don't think either one of us has physicals to hold up,
We
but I
don't.
felt the need to state that before I threw it to you.
I think this book is very cute. I think that this issue specifically, I suppose, is very cute. Like the first one wasn't cute. I really like I love seeing the world through Cassandra Cain's perspective because she was such a blank slate. So it's very like narratively satisfying to see her like spell out the way that she sees the world almost. Like I think it's a really fun way to get insight into her character in a way that with other characters probably would feel like incredibly heavy-handed and like okay we get it, but like no, she's new to being a person relatively,
I
she
love that
didn't.
description. Accurate, but so funny.
Yeah, I love her so much because of it. And I thought that the way that she interacted both with Lady Shiva and with everybody at the restaurant was just incredibly strong. Like it feels it. I think what really gets me about it is her dialogue is so sparse. Like even in the
Yeah.
caption, she had a little she had like a little front matter thing that came back around at the back. But even in terms of like caption and internal thought, we don't get a lot of content from Cass. So much of it is in the way that she like interacts with people physically or like the way that we see them respond to each other. And I think that's just a really wonderful way to build out Cassandra's lore. Because she deserves lore and places in the city that are her own. And I thought this was a really, really fun setting for this issue to go and to show us a little bit more of Cassandra Cain's world. That being said, the action so fun. I really like the way that they're doing like the very martial arty, which is the only way you can do a Cassandra Cain book, right? With like heavy martial art vibes. I think last time I likened it to Daredevil When Without Fear, and I feel the need to do it again, where it's like, yeah, there's like just really nice character focused stuff that like gives you insight into the character and then also really kick ass action. For a character who doesn't necessarily want to let the reader in, it's a very
Yeah.
observational book, which I find super fun. How did you feel about this issue?
an issue. There was a lot of cool stuff. I agree with you. I think the way the action's done in this book is really rad. I really like these villains too. I think I mentioned the last issue. I
Right.
like Blue Ninjas. I think it's a cool vibe. I like the main guy that was introduced here. I don't remember
Oh,
his
he has a
name.
name. I think
Yeah,
it's
I
something
liked
the
him.
unseen.
Yeah, something like
Said
that.
he's
I liked him a
blind.
lot. His like weird like kind of he was like touching
Ugh.
people and he was like oh
Yeah.
and he does seem very formidable. I will
He's got
say
spooky
finally don't
dialogue.
know why I made this assumption, but like up until a decent amount in when Shiva like directly uh spoken to him. Oh, it's Kaladin the Unseen, by the way. Up until like she directly spoke with him and then spoke to Cass about him, I thought he was a woman for like 90% of
I
this
I
issue.
stared at that first appearance, like that first panel, so much to be like, are you a dude or are you just totally yoked, girl? And
I thought it was just
I
a totally yoked
I don't
woman. Like
know. So I'll just follow along. So you are not alone in that.
yeah, but then Shiva does refer to him as he later, so I
Yeah.
was like, okay. But anyway, not relevant at all. Just wanted to say that because it was a
No,
thing. But
I
yeah, the
do find
action's
it.
really,
I love
yeah.
that you brought it up because I did spend a hot minute staring at my phone, just being like, "Ooh."
The funny thing is, I was so sure the one way. It wasn't until and then I went back to the images and I was like, what? Like I was not confused. I was just 100% sure that it was a woman until later
I'm
on.
not gonna lie, I kind of wish it was. Like, it's a cast focus book. Let her have a sick lady ninja who's yoked as hell.
So
Why
that's how
not?
I thought it was going, where with like the Shiva and the cast. Like that was my assumption. But in any case, yeah, I thought a lot was really great here. I thought it was a little slow in the plot progression,
Correct. Yeah,
wise,
I'll give you that.
and I had a couple little gripes. One is, funnily enough, one of the things you love. I thought Bao Bao's dialogue was way on the nose
I
and over the
liked
top.
her.
I thought it was just really kind of caked on. Like it almost felt like the kind of lines you get in like a fan fiction type thing. I was like, ah, she was going so hard, like that. Can't she come in? She's so, and I'm like, maybe that's a
I'll give
little
you the kitty
on the
cat is a
nose.
little much. Like, the
Yeah.
nickname is a bit much.
But small gripe there. But then my other thing is that Shiva's injury didn't really seem serious to me. Like the way that they kind of then wanted it to be like a serious injury. I was like, oh, that was like supposed to be a real serious injury that she like really needed attention for. I'm like, that didn't really come across correctly to me. Small thing
That's
there. I
fair.
think the back end of this issue, like basically once what are they called, like the
The
unbeing or something, like
unburied
unburied. The once the unburied showed up at the restaurant,
restaurant.
yeah, at that point I was like, okay, the book kind of got going again, and I was really
Mhm.
back into it. And the ending of this issue is, whew, nice, and it definitely gets me very excited for what's to come. But yeah, the front end had those couple little gripes, but I'm also very excited for Calvin because he put
Yes.
up a big front there, so it's gonna
He's
be
real spooky. Like, you
yeah.
know it's bad when your first appearance is killing firefighters.
He
Like,
also is potentially blind. He doesn't have pupils.
he is blind.
Okay.
I think
Is
they
that?
say
I
that
guess that's the
specifically.
unseen thing. I guess that's the
Yeah.
unseen thing. Yeah.
And I think the
But
little flowers let him
yeah.
sense or
But
something. Something neat like that. Some
yeah.
cool
So
ass ninja shit.
that's rad too. He is a much more swole daredevil, which is wild.
Did you say a much more small? That man is
I
yoked.
said swole. I said
Oh,
a much more
swole.
swole
I
daredevil.
was so confused. I'm like, there is no world, except for maybe the absolute universe, where you could look at that guy and be like, yeah, that's a small guy right there.
Yeah, no, I thought this was a good issue, and interesting. Also says 13 plus on the cover. Just noticing this with all of these books now. It
That's
says 13 plus on
interesting.
the
I
cover.
wouldn't have
Yeah,
called this one. I guess it's got blood. Maybe that's why.
I don't know. Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a stretch to call this 13 plus.
Yeah, like I wouldn't have called this 13 plus, but I
Yeah,
guess with it there, he does, I believe, bisect those firefighters.
eh,
Not graphically though.
you can be bisected. Not you specifically. I meant people can be bisected in a 13 plus book. In any case, do you want to move on to what's next?
Oh, to be
Long
clear, I
Cold
meant I would
Winter.
call it younger than 13 plus
Oh yeah,
if
yeah,
it
yeah,
weren't for
yeah.
like the blood and bisection.
I think even with blood and bisection, like who cares?
Who cares? Probably the
Um,
parents of those 13-year-olds. In any case, we've got 3 more books to talk about. Are you ready for the Long Cold Winter? Long Cold Winter number 1. In the not-too-distant future, the air on Earth has become unbreathable. However, a multinational company called Airco has constructed generators that provide oxygen for those who can afford it. Peace Dog, a desperate ex-soldier who has been willing to do anything to obtain breathable air, is haunted by his past and hunted by bounty hunters, though he may have found his way out of his current predicament by helping a mysterious robot child escape the dangerous and congested city. But someone from his past has no intention of letting him leave alive. The writer here is Francesca Perillo of Love Me, a Romance Story. The artist is Stefano Corticelli of Love Me, a Romance Story, Spill Blood, and 2000 AD. The colorist is Lorenzo Scarmella, and the letterer is Buddy Beaudoin. Jaybert, how you love a father-son story, and this has the setup of a father-son story.
Has a robot called the Kid.
It has a robot called the Kid, and a grumpy, violent man walking by the Kid's side. That's kind of on brand for you.
Yeah, the first thing I will say is I think it's a bold move to go with the Kid when Mandalorian did the child like just a few years ago. It was like a big thing. Just I don't know, bold move in my opinion.
That's fair. I didn't watch The Mandalorian, so I was just like, that's a little funny because like every grumpy older father figure who takes a child on a cross-country journey calls them like Kid.
Yeah. That's my question. Because first I think conceptually this was really cool. I like a good apocalypse story, and I think there's some cool conceptual things. I think it has a strong vibe and like aesthetic to it as well, which is great. I'm wondering if it's trying to be really on the nose and like troped out like intentionally, and if like the plan is to do something with that, because I have to think that's the idea, because it's a lot of like trope and lines of dialogue that feel like they could have been plucked from a bunch of different things, and like there's just a lot of like things I'm like, yeah, that is like what happens in this moment in this type of like taking the Kid apocalyptic story. It's like, oh yeah, like that sounds like the line that's said here, and this feels like the thing that happens here. Like it felt very beat for beat how this story goes. Didn't feel like really any unique angle or anything was taken. So I don't know if it's set up for that to happen in the future. I think you need to do something, especially in like the modern era of miniseries. You need to do something a little bit more unique in the first issue to really hook me, and I think that's why this issue kind of failed to hook me. There's just nothing in this that really jumped out to me as being unique or kind of on a super fresh angle. But I think it was very like nothing is bad about it. It was just very it didn't really hook me.
Yeah, no, I think that's super fair. I think one of the things that really helps this book for me is the art of Stefano Corticelli. It's a very distinct style. Like, it's got kind of like that incredibly busy, almost grimy look to it that I'm a really big fan of. So that really helped it feel unique to me. I do hear and share your concerns about it being very tropey. Like, naming the robot the Kid, where it is like that classic kind of trope of like, I'm going to keep my distance from this kid before they like worm their way into my heart. I don't know that I feel the groundwork being laid for that to be challenged in any way. Especially because
that was just my hope. I was like, I hope with as much that like that's because otherwise like I don't know why you're leaning into the tropes this hard if there's not an idea to play with it.
That's super fair, and I think that part of it might just be a leaning in to lean in, if that makes sense. But of course, that's not something that you can really tell from this issue. I think the tricky thing for me is, especially after reading the summary of it, it's a book that has a lot of really cool world building that in this first issue didn't get a lot of space. Like
I think the world is like the world and the vibe is like the coolest thing here.
Yes. And I think the tricky thing is it didn't get the space to really play with that. Like, we talked over a year ago now about the first issue of Petrolhead and how it was like a 42-page first issue, right?
Yeah, very similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And I think that having that extra room to really flesh out the world was a huge boon to
I
Petrolhead.
agree.
And this not having that extra space, I think that it didn't get the chance that it needed to really fill this world out, especially in something like this that is very tropey, where it's like, hey, you get what's happening here. It's using that shorthand to kind of move through the story. But because it's using the shorthand, it's not having the same emotional impact.
I I don't know. I feel like it has to be intentional, and
I mean, I think it's intentional. I think it can be intentional without being something that's going to turn it on its head. Like, you can lean into a trope without challenging the trope.
That's fair. I guess. I guess to me, maybe it doesn't. It doesn't just feel like it's like leaning into it. It feels like it's almost trying to satirize it.
Oh, okay,
no, like because like some of like I'm gonna read you an exchange, and like I just can't believe that this exchange is fully. This is when he meets the kid. It's who are you? What do you want? My name is the kid. I'm a robot. Yes, I can see that. I need your help. I don't help anybody. Like that feels like satire to me. Like those lines are just so on the nose and not really doing anything other than just saying like, here's this trope. She wants help. He doesn't want to help. Like, look at the, like I don't know. I feel like there has to be something going on, and I'm expecting something to happen. But maybe you're right, and it's just leaning into those tropes. But yeah, that's the fact that I'm not completely sure one way or the other is, I think, a little bit of a
yeah, and I think
concern.
I err on the side of if you're not being explicit with irony, as ironic as that is. If your irony is hard to parse out, you haven't done irony well. And so I'm not very gracious with being like, oh, clearly this was done ironically.
That's fair. Yeah, I don't know. Just it wasn't something that hooked me. I don't know. You really enjoyed the art style, so I don't know
I like
how where that lands it for you. So
it gives it definite bonus points for me. Yeah. I'm a sucker for art that I like.
Yeah. But yeah.
But we have two more books to talk about.
We have two more books. We do indeed.
Including The Hour of the Wolf.
Hour of the Wolf #2. With Owen and Jan now stuck in the painting, they are forced to relive the brutal details of how the painting came to be, and only now do they realize the scope of how many lives it has taken. As time continues to tick away, Owen and Jan must fight to escape. But with every door leads to a different time and place in the universe. How do you know which way to go? The writer of the series is Mark London of Battle Cats, Hunt, Kill, Repeat, and Wolvenheart. The artist is Danilo Bayrath of Ghost Rider, Deadpool v Gambit, and Howard the Duck. The colorist is Fabi Marquez, and the letterer is Dave Sharp. Katie, if I remember correctly, this is one of those issues where one of those books where you liked the first issue, but you didn't like the direction you thought the series was going in.
Yes. I stand by that. I think Hour of the Wolf is primed for very short episodic adventures, like a kind of Monster of the Week style thing.
Yeah.
With
even
this one,
slightly more than a single week. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Monster of the so that doesn't work either with the way the comics
Monster of the Ark.
Shit. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And we do focus in on the monster part in this one. Like, I think that my big qualm with the first one was that we split our time in a way that I didn't love.
You didn't like the time that was with is Owen his name, right?
Owen is the werewolf boy.
What is the actual wolf guy's name? Do we know his name?
Isn't that Owen? He's the werewolf boy. That's Owen.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. He's the Wolvenheart is the Wolvenheart.
Wolvenheart is the organization he works for.
Yeah. So he's a Wolvenheart boy. He's a member of the Wolvenheart.
The way that because we had like the thing with the husband of the victims, then we had the thing with the victims, and we had the thing with Owen, and it was all a little timey-wimey, not my favorite setup. Yeah. This one we do get more focused on, because the husband is essentially taken out of the equation, and the children are essentially taken out of the equation on this one. Because we're really focusing on the creation of the painting, and Owen and Jan are there and essentially learning this as we are learning it. So it all was more cohesive in this issue. It's still not my favorite setup because it still feels like it's trying to hold to a more traditional narrative structure, but the way that these issues are being placed on that timeline isn't my favorite pacing. Like in this one, we get a lot of that backstory for the painting, and I really
I agree.
like
The pacing
that.
in this one was a little interesting.
And then when we get to the actual characters acting on the world, it gets a little weird again. It also, I will say, I don't think it really delivered on the hook, on the not the hook, the kind of cliffhanger, the stinger of the last issue.
Weirdly,
which
it like became the cliffhanger
me.
again in this issue,
Yeah,
which is
which
interesting.
Bothered me. Like
No,
it'd be one thing if
fair.
it didn't deliver on what happened at the end of last issue, but then they did literally use it again in this issue.
Yeah, they doubled up, which makes me feel like we can't even really like spoil it because like it's just again the cliffhanger, but also like it was, I don't know. It's
See, it feels like I like the part that is actual investigating, even when it's like kind of being monologued to by a villain. I think that the pacing is thrown off a little, and but I am glad that Owen and Jan are kind of working together now and starting to act on the world.
Yeah. Are you getting the vibe that Jan's gonna join? Like, yes, for the foreseeable future. Yeah,
which
me
is
too.
weird because she has 2 children. But I guess if it's 3 a.m.
I don't know that she's gonna have 2 children by the end of this.
I don't think they're gonna kill the kids.
They could. They
can't do it as a cliffhanger twice and then do it.
Or the kids maybe the kids will be stolen by somebody. It'll be like, she's gonna stick with the group until they can recover the children. That's a classic little hook there.
A classic. But how did you feel about Hour of the Wolf?
Honestly, I agree with almost everything you said. I think there is a little bit of weird pacing in the way that the series is structured. I really did like the backstory. I thought the backstory stuff was great. Right. I think Danilo's art is really, really great too. I'm a big fan of the way this book works. And I think every time we talk about horror in the creative corner, I talk about the fact that in comics, you're not going to really scare anybody. So you want to like unsettle and like make them feel like a lot of the way that like the art works with like the monster stuff in this book does like make my skin crawl sometimes when like we're dealing with a guy who has like no features and like they're still yet like trying to like stab his features despite the fact they're not there because they are like underneath. That makes my skin growl, which is like the ideal feeling for this type of book. And I'm like, that is perfect. When you get me with that scene, like you've done your job, you've made me feel exactly what you want to make me feel. Like that is just such a success of a comic when it like makes you viscerally feel something. Like that's awesome. More of that. I love that. But yeah, like we get all this words and stuff, and then it's just like a little bit of the actual like what's going on, and the pacing there is I think a little bit off. Though I think, unlike you, I have like the inverse feeling where like, despite the like little stumbles and stuff, so like I really am like on the hook for where this is going because I think Danilo's art is going to be so effective for like all these different monster things, and I'm really excited for that. And just if they can make me get this visceral reaction with this like spooky, unsettling stuff, I'm like doing kind of the monster of. Because again, I don't think it's going to be a monster of the week. If it was a new monster every single issue, I think I wouldn't be as on board. I think it's going to be like an arc by arc thing, and I am here for that. Even if it's not like long, if it's like 3-issue arcs, that's fine too. Like if we're gonna get a like kind of more long format story with each one, and maybe this one's just a little bit bumpy because we're also introducing who's going to be the secondary main character, I assume,
and also introducing the first main character.
Oh yeah, no, but I meant because like. You know, his thing was separate. I meant like because they also have to like actually worry about plucking somebody out of this versus like just dealing with the character there. Whereas like when we're like, okay, we have the 2 of them, we're gonna go in, do a full story, and keep doing that. Like I think that'll probably feel a little bit better pacing wise. So yeah, I think your concerns are all super valid, and I share them. But overall, I came away really happy with this book because it made me feel something, and that's like the number one thing you want out of a comic.
Love that. So, super great. Are you ready to talk about our last book of the week? Which is Prairie Gods number 3.
Let's do it.
Prairie Gods number 3. No Man's Land. Bill Roberts, a sprightly 124-year-old, tells Freddie Davis a story about his time in World War One. While in a nighttime trench raid, a shell burst and knocked him unconscious. He awoke to find a creature injecting him with healing serum. When Germans attacked the creature, Bill fought them off and took the creature to get more of the serum for itself. Once on board its ship, the creature revealed itself to be a human woman. Bill has never been injured or had an illness since. The writer-artist here is Shane Connery Volk of Nottingham. The letter is Becca Carey. We love a writer-artist in this house.
We do.
Also, Prairie Gods is a very interesting book in that this is number 3. It is anthology stories, all created by Sean. I keep saying Sean Connery. I'm so sorry, Shane. Shane Connery Volk. So like a super unique setup in the comic space. Really rad. TC.
Yeah.
Jay, I don't remember. You weren't the biggest fan of number 1. You liked number 2 better. Has it kept its momentum, or was number 2 kind of a peak for us?
Dude, before I answer that question, I need to come at that blurb, because that might be one of the worst comic book blurbs I've ever
literally
gotten.
told the
just
entire
the full story. It's just the full story. Also got the age of the character wrong. It's 127. It's like very like wild. I don't know who wrote that blurb, but like, why are you spoiling the entire book and getting the man's age wrong? Like, don't do that. I'm so glad that I didn't read that blurb before I read the book. But to answer your question, if it kept its momentum going, no, not at all, because this was so much better than the other 2 stories. This was by far the best thing this series has put out, and I don't think it's even like remotely. And I enjoyed issue 2 a ton. This was so ridiculously good, and I'm a sci-fi boy, so like the cool sci-fi elements of this were super, and like the way that like blended with the art style too, of like this grimy, more like wartime thing. I also like war stories, so like it was really a good blending of things that I enjoyed. Like the way that the sci-fi elements played with that gave a very like classical sci-fi vibe, which I really enjoyed. But yeah, this was so rad. I mean, I talked about it recently with Titans, but another one coming in right at the end of the year that might be up there on my single issues of the year when we talk about that, because this was another phenomenal single issue. But like, this had so many things that like I was on and feel, because like it's not, I don't know how to put this. It's not like a plotty issue. It's like a full blown like vibes issue, and like feel and like especially visuals. Like there's
it's
a
not
lot
a very narrative issue.
Yeah, it's got a lot of like beautiful imagery in there, and like the lines are great. Like it's just an ongoing narration. Like it literally is like a like, you know, old timey like story being told to you by this person, and you get images with it, which worked so well. And there's like a cold realness to like the war of it all. Like I don't know, like I don't know why my brain is assuming not, but maybe it is. Like upon reading this, I feel like Sean Connery Volk was probably in the military. I don't know, probably not actually, but like I get that vibe.
Connery Volk absolutely is 127 and was in World War One.
Yeah, but I don't know. It felt like either like maybe he has like a family member that talked to him a bunch. Like there's a realness to like the cost and feeling of war here, which like really weighs on it and gives it weight. And this story had so much weight, and I think that's what made, when these sci-fi elements came into it, like it made it feel so cool and detached. And I also just loved the way that it worked. Like this cool, it has like this healing stuff, and it like plugs in. It like just got a good sci-fi feel to it too, but with like the realness of what came before, and then the coolness of the sci-fi. Like it's just, I don't know, man. It's almost hard to put into words like how this worked so well, because I feel like when I'm explaining it, it's like nothing happens in this that would make you go like, oh, that sounds like it's so interesting plot wise, but like it just works really.
It really is a journey. Like I think we've talked about that with I think we talked about it with the Maze book, where there are some books where the best part of the book, fully complimentary to be clear, the best part of the book is being in the moment reading the book and like the journey you go on while reading. And this is very much one of those. As a sucker for the Westerns, as we have learned, I did have a particular passion for issue 2 of this, But you're right, this is really just so astounding. I think that it's really interesting the way that this one messes with kind of the concept of the anthology as a whole, with like
It's not like
the
in the
sense of
town.
place.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because like it's very much kind of a series that's built on this place, and this really pulls you out of that place. But I think that the way that they tied it in with like, oh, it makes sense that this guy would live here because he's 127 years old and was like touched by not aliens, but was touched by spacemen. Like I think that adds
Warman.
Space Woman. I think that adds a lot to the kind of sense of the place, despite the fact that most of the story didn't take place there, which was super duper rad to me. Looking at it as a whole piece, I don't want to repeat a bunch of the stuff that you said, but I really do you gotta give it to the art. It's so well done. It's so good for that grimy ass war art, like that World War One shit.
Is it weird that the thing that I came away like most like entranced by was just the way that he did like the night stars? Like it's such a simple thing, but I just like was looking at the backgrounds of those stars and like
I love it.
I don't know.
Fucking poetic, man.
Real good, man.
Really gorgeous pages. Such a journey to read. I will say, with both of us gushing, I feel like it may be a bit redundant to go into the pull list rec for the week. Jay, do you have
Are we
pick?
both doing this? Are we both doing this? I'm doing Prairie Gods 3. I feel like that was very obvious.
I am also picking Prairie Gods 3. I've really, really liked Prairie Gods so far. I think that it's got a really strong sense of identity that's really, really cool and rad.
I agree. And it's so good aesthetically. I think I enjoyed the writing a lot. I think the writing took a huge leap forward in this issue. Like this just felt on a whole nother level, right? Because like not like because the plot was been like the literal like on page words just felt so much more powerful.
I really liked the issue 2 on page words, like the way that he interacted with the
that's
the
fair. I think
rule.
it's the vibes of what you like.
Valid.
Like this was so up my alley, and like I also think my favorite illustration is like the pages in which he goes into like the spaceship. Like there's like a series of like 3 pages that are like
with color on there.
Yeah, they're like and it's like light. Versus... It looks like when like things are like overexposed. It looks like overexposed film, literally.
Gorgeous.
And it's so cool because it also gives you like when this figure's on. I feel like I'm not going to spoil anything because everything was spoiled.
The blurb spoiled it all.
When this figure is revealed, like their face is like shadowed out while everything else is super bright, and it's like a missing thing of like his memory because he couldn't like actually like describe or like give any like description of what this person looked like, so we don't get anything because this is a verbal story. Like it just felt like so much care was taken in the presentation of this as a literal story that was being told, and I appreciate that so much. Like I think it so well.
Yeah.
Why was it your choice, Katie?
All the same reasons. It's gorgeous. The writing was phenomenal. The actual story, the way that it contributes to the anthology as a whole, is incredibly unique and also exciting and rad. I've just loved Prairie Gods thus far. This is just another phenomenal installment in a book that I've really, really, really been enjoying. So you heard it here, folks. Both of us with a collective pull list rec for Prairie Gods number 3.
Yes.
Really awesome stuff.
So pick it up, and you can pick it up without the first 2 easily.
Yeah.
Not that you shouldn't read the first 2 because they're good too, but they're all individual stories. The first 2 are a little bit more connected than this one is, but you can very easily pick this one up and read it on its own. And I think it's worth doing if you enjoy good.
If you like war books, if you like sci-fi books, if you like Midwest Gothic, all of the above.
If you like writer-artists, if you like, like old campfire stories. If you like
writer-artists with 3 names, because for some reason they're the most amazing.
Yeah. Was Shane Connery the one that... I think Shane Connery was the one you were looking for last week when you were trying to think of the other 3-name one and you couldn't get there.
Committed to memory. Shane Connery Volk. Yeah.
What were you saying before? Was it Sean? Yeah, Sean.
Iconic James Bond actor.
You think James Bond? Yeah, you just wanted to be on the James Bond train. But
that's right.
Yeah, it was so good. I could keep gushing, but I think we've done that enough. So
that's right. So instead, we shall head over to the Creator Corner. Here we are in the Creator Corner, where we sit back, relax, talk about books, talk about being writers. I'm not doing a hint in this one. It's too late in the evening. We are talking about suspension of disbelief today. This is, I think, especially in the comics medium with the type of stories that are normally told in comics, incredibly important to cultivate and maintain. You're a big rules boy.
Internal logic is the way I
Yeah,
put it. That's not like,
yeah,
I think internal logic is incredibly important to the suspension of disbelief. I would argue it is
exactly.
the most important thing.
If you were to kind of off the dome describe very briefly what the function of suspension of disbelief is, or kind of what suspension of disbelief is, how would you define it?
Yeah, suspension of disbelief is, I believe, get it, I believe is the ability of a reader to accept what you are telling them as like a real, maybe not a real, but like a thing, like a more like something that they can buy into it and actually
Mm-hmm.
enjoy and care about. Really, I think that's really what it is. Like it's the ability to buy in and like care about a world that requires some suspension of disbelief. Like when you're reading, The Walking Dead, you have to be sitting there and you're not gonna you're not gonna think like, none of the gas would be working after a couple months because that's not how gas works. Like you wouldn't still, they wouldn't still be driving or be able to do all this stuff. But like you suspend some of your real world disbelief, or even like literally something as simple as like humans can't fly, but obviously they're flying. Like that's a simple example, but you want to get beyond that. Of like they're not gonna be sitting there being like, this cannot legitimately happen in the real world, and thus I cannot buy into the story. So they're gonna suspend that disbelief and engage with the story and be like, yes, Invincible can fly, so I am, more concerned with whether he's gonna run out of air in space, but I believe that he can hold his breath in space for an hour, but I still care that at an hour and 1 minute he's gonna not be able to hold his breath anymore and he might suffocate in space, like that kind of a thing.
A
Yeah,
very
is that a good?
brief definition. Thank you.
Yeah,
I just want
I
to
have
real
never
quick.
been brief in my life.
No, he has not.
No.
I just want to roast you real quick. I love that you're like, okay, yes, The Walking Dead. I'm like, right, zombies don't exist, and you're like, the gas would expire,
It's because
Katie.
that's like the thing that I see people complain about the most is like
Which is
the
very
idea
funny
that,
because, like,
yeah.
do you want them to walk everywhere?
Yeah, where they're like, the funny thing is like, and I think the reason like that so many people accept it is The Walking Dead takes a lot of care in like the way they do things. It's not just like, oh, the cars drive eternally, because that's something
Mm-hmm.
that I think is harder to believe than, oh, they're constantly siphoning gas from unused cars and gas stations and stuff, and they run out of gas, but they need to keep finding gas, and it's like that. At least there's an internal logic there where yes, gas never goes bad versus in our world when gas would go bad, but
Joke's on
it's not
them.
like they
The
go infinite.
zombies bit the gas. It's
Yeah.
fine.
No, but like different thing between like
Yeah,
a shotgun that never runs out of ammo and like, a blaster. Like there's a different
yeah.
level of buying in there. And it's the same thing in like, oh, a car that would never runs out of gas, I think is harder to believe than just
Getting ahead
them
of me.
siphoning gas from other things. I'm sorry.
You're getting ahead of me there. Stop it. Because I
This
was
is
very
this is how I think about these things. I love internal
no.
logic.
I'm
It's
glad
a
you're getting
big
ahead
deal,
of
I
me
think.
because
Yeah.
I was very excited when I thought of this question, which is why I want
Yeah.
to get ahead of you now.
Yes,
And
get ahead of me.
there are obviously levels of suspension of disbelief and
Yeah.
tools at your disposal to help people buy in. You mentioned the difference between a blaster and a shotgun, and that was literally like the type of example I was going to use of like a made up sci fi weapon compared to its real world analog. Uh, if someone is familiar with something, it's going to be harder for them to suspend their disbelief in using it. I think that this is also why you see people being like, oh, well, I have a degree in this, and so I can tell you this is factually inaccurate. Because, of course, it's
Yeah.
going to bother the person who knows about it.
Yeah.
Like, did I, as a person, before, like, I don't know, I'm trying to think, because the gas thing is, like, a kind of common, like, meme, I guess, at this point, of, like, apocalypse things. Like,
Oh
did
yeah.
I, before seeing those memes, know that gas expired? No, because why would I need to, right?
Everybody knows that. Like you could so easily get away with until people are sharing it around. You can get away with the idea the gas doesn't go bad. Like, who
Exactly.
the gas
Yeah.
goes?
Like, why do we
Like in
gas
your
go
head,
bad?
it's like, oh, it's oil, but it's like, oh, because it's mixed with shit. It's not straight up, But like whatever. But like, yeah, in your head, it's like, oh, it's a natural resource. Why would it then be like, like that doesn't make sense. Like that's weird.
Yeah. So where do you think it is most appropriate, least appropriate? Where's that fine line? Maybe where you're fictionalizing, because I think there is a difference between suspension of disbelief when it comes to, oh, we are in a sci-fi setting and someone has a blaster, and the
Yeah.
suspension of disbelief of, like you're saying, infinite ammo shotgun. Like, those are very different things.
The number one thing I think, if unless you had more to that
No, no,
question,
no,
but
go, go, go,
I was
go.
gonna, yeah. The number one thing I think in that particular example is that one feels very clearly we have created this thing and like this is how this thing works, and the other one doesn't feel like, oh, in this universe shotguns don't have ammo. No, it feels like, oh, you forgot that he should have to reload after 6 shots. It feels like an error versus feeling like an
Mm-hmm.
internal piece of logic. Like there's a, you know I think people would think it's stupid, but you could very well have somebody like create a cool shotgun that shoots like essentially would
Blaster
be bullets, but you
bolts.
would call it like like metallic energy or whatever, and it would just have infinite ammo. You could make that up, and people would be like, that's a little, like you just wanted to make an infinite ammo shotgun. But people, I think, would still accept that better. Where they'd be like, oh, well, the book told us why he is infinite, and then you get your little nerds going like, actually, this is why. And I'll tell you the funniest example of using this to like control the nerds is
Mm-hmm.
what the MCU did with Doctor Strange in Infinity War, where they just had him be like, I have seen all futures and there's only one where we win. So anytime the nerds went like, well, they actually could have just won by doing this, and like they're right, because like very clearly that would
Yeah.
have happened. It's like you have a bunch of other nerds that show up and go, well, actually Doctor Strange saw every future and they only won in the one that they went with, so clearly even if your thing happened they still would have lost. And it's like weaponized buying into the world. I think that's incredibly funny.
That
um
is, that is. But
yeah
where do you think, where do you as a writer say,
yeah
okay, I'm going to, in my sci-fi setting, have someone have a shotgun, or in my, urban fantasy setting, have someone have a magic wand? Like, when do you go from having real world things that people recognize and understand to creating your new whole cloth fictional item to
Big
stand in
part
for that?
divide person. Like I have two very diverse ways that I write things. One is I'm gonna set it fairly firmly in the real world with this stuff. Like I have a book that involves a lot of ancient, civilizations and ancient cultures and stuff. And like that's a book where I'll sit down, I'll do ton of research so I can make sure that things make sense even when I'm adding a mystic or a magical element to it. It's like, no, this would be like this, and this is how they would do war and all that filled out. And then I have my side where it's like, I'm gonna do a sci-fi book, and that's why I love sci-fi, because it's just like I'm gonna make everything the fuck up because nothing's real. Everything's mine. I'm building this world. I get to build the rules and the way that this like universe operates. So I do very hard divides, I think, compared to a lot of people might be like, oh, it's a sci-fi setting, but my character's still going to have a shotgun. If I'm in a sci-fi setting, all my characters are going to have, sci-fi
Blasters.
weapons, so I don't have to like deal with that. Whereas like if I'm setting something more in Earth, I'm gonna uh basically take things very like uh realistically, because like you said, like when people relate to, when people like feel things as real from the real world, it's much harder to get them to buy into those things not
Hmm.
working the way they know they should. So I'm going to ground a lot more, and then anything that is going to be different is going to be like this either out of place sci-fi or this like magic that's like very clearly separate and magic. It's like
Hmm.
it's not going to be like, oh, he has a chest plate, and like we're gonna find out later that it's enchanted, and that's why it has been surviving all of this stuff. It's gonna be like, no, he's gonna have like this glowing chest plate then that's like very obviously magic. So I do
Yeah, I
hard
love
divides,
that.
and I don't think that's like the right answer. There's ways to do things that
Oh,
are
of
much
course,
more
yeah.
like ingrained and built out. So I'm interested because I think you're probably more of the person who does more like
I love an urban fantasy. Like,
yeah, so I feel like you're actually much more equipped to answer your own question here as compared to me, who does these much like harsher divides in the kind of couple.
well, I think
that I write.
it's good to see the different ways to approach things. Like,
Yeah,
I think that one thing that you said in there that I think applies kind of across the board is making things on the page clearly be of your magic variety. I'm going to talk about it in terms of magic because I prefer urban fantasy to urban sci-fi because I don't think urban sci-fi is really a thing. I guess you could call like superheroes urban sci-fi. Very weird.
I mean, superheroes are like before superheroes became like their own thing. I think they were really kind of essentially considered sci-fi because they are like
Yeah,
a sub-genre of sci-fi for the most part.
exactly.
Outside
Yeah,
of the ones that are a sub-genre of fantasy, it's one or the other depending on
yeah,
like what way you
exactly.
go. Yeah.
But with things like urban fantasy, I love the aesthetic of mixing these things. Like my personal favorite thing in the entire world is putting a pauldron on somebody wearing a hoodie. Like I have in my files, on my hard drive, multiple pieces of what equates to fan art, I suppose, but like I'll be professional and call them character sketches of a character from like my like personal favorite novel project that I've been working on and off for like 1,001 years. So clearly more off than on. And it's like, yes, the important thing is she wears a baseball cap, she wears a hoodie, and you see a pauldron. And that's what's important there.
That's it.
Like with the straps on the outside, it's the best. And so, like you're saying,
I
when
love
you're going,
straps on traditional clothing. Straps are so cool.
it's so good.
90s got
But
one thing right. It was fucking straps.
it was fucking straps, dude. Rob Liefeld, thank you for the straps. Uh,
Yes. We
straps
salute you.
and fucking pouches.
The pouch.
The pouch. But I think when you're looking into kind of blending the two of them and keeping people on board with what you're doing, one important thing is the way that your characters interact with those things. So if you've got kind of a fish out of water character, like, I'll just use Harry Potter as an example. You're Harry Potter.
Yeah.
The first time he interacts with a wand, he's like, holy shit, it's a wand. What the fuck? Um,
That's the accent that he has.
exactly. Harry Potter, notorious German child? Who knows what that was?
Was that supposed to be German? I was getting like a
don't know.
soprano vibe.
Okay, sure. Notorious Italian child? I think it was nothing, and that's the important thing. But then once you get used to your wand, the characters in your world are going to be just as familiar with a wand as they will be with a shotgun. Which does mean some people will know how to use it and will know that it, works in a certain way, and some people won't. Like they're varying degrees. Not everyone should be an expert on your magic thing just because it's fictional.
But importantly, I want to point out something that I think is an example of maybe some of the, not necessarily wrong, but something Harry Potter did that made it harder for people to buy in at a point, which is when the rules are not necessarily consistent. One of the things that I think people complain the most about in Harry Potter is like, do they need to say words while they're casting spells or not? Like, can they just wave it, or do they have to be saying a spell? And the fact that that was never consistent, or sometimes it was said that it was one thing, but it was actually the other thing, like, is something that makes it hard for people to buy in, despite this being a franchise that people love. And if something as big as Harry Potter can have issues with people buying in because of something like that, your rinky-dink comic is definitely going to have issues if you are not consistent to your own rules.
Which brings me to my next question, which is very much a more you-suited question. Internal logic is a huge part of suspension of disbelief. If something doesn't make sense in your universe, it's not going to make sense to your reader. If it makes sense in your universe, if your characters can give a reason for why, or like an acceptance of why things happen, then your readers can get that by proxy. So how do you wrestle with internal logic and, very importantly, I think, with that exposition dumping?
Yeah, well, that's the mentioning the exposition dump is important, because the number one thing I think with internal logic, because like, actually, I'm gonna there's a few things I need to get out here because I'm a rambly
He's a rambly boy.
The first thing is, it's not breaking your internal logic if you've not established internal logic, which is something some people will horribly abuse, but it's true. If there's like this device that they found and they don't know how it works, then like you're not breaking your internal logic. If they thought it could only teleport them, but it turns out it can also transport between dimensions, like it's like, no, they are learning this as it's going on, and you hadn't like established that as something, if that's just something that your characters maybe thought, where it's something that fans assumed because that was the only way it had been seen being used. Like, that's not an inherent thing. Now, you do have to be careful with that stuff, but that's the first thing. It's not, so don't shoot yourself in the foot there and have them be like, evidently this has just happened. Like, have them be like, oh my god, I can't believe it could do that all this time, and we didn't realize. Like, you can do very smooth things there. Number two thing is, if you establish something as an internal logic and you are going to break it, it is much better to establish a reason why it has now been broken than just not address it.
Yes.
This is what I call the Ben 10 rule, because Ben 10 was notorious for retconning without saying anything or without actually explaining how the retcons worked. But despite my love of Ben 10, some of the worst things it did would just be like, this is how this works now. And some of the things that were more, accepted were when they went, oh, yeah, Kevin doesn't absorb electricity anymore. Now he can turn himself into materials that he touches. It's because he got better control of his powers. Like, is that maybe a little bit lame? Like, yeah, but at least there's an explanation.
Is it a stretch? Sure.
Yeah, but like, at least that's not being addressed. When it goes from, oh, I'm gonna keep giving Ben 10 examples because I don't know why. When it goes from like, the plumbers are an Earth-based group to take on aliens, to the plumbers are an intergalactic police force, and there is no explanation, and they're just like, that's not what they were. That's much harder to buy into because you now know that they have contradicted themselves. Whereas like the other one is like kind of masking it. You're going like, no, this has changed, and we're addressing the fact that it changed. So I think it's very important to when you have established internal rules, if you absolutely need to break, and that's the other one, you have to break them. That's a very important thing. But if for whatever reason for the plot you're going to break them, like, go in there, the sci-fi sword that cuts through dimensions, you need it to now cut through like locations too, so they can like teleport. It's like, oh, the maker of the sword comes in and gives it a tune-up or whatever. I don't know. Just have
it
some
gets
sort of
blasted by some location-based teleporting enemies. Blaster.
Yeah. I mean, the classic Iron Man thing: just have a suit get destroyed and have him make a new suit if you want the suit to have a new ability. Like, it's just the Iron Man thing. It's just destroy the old suit, build a new suit, you have new abilities. Like, it's that easy sometimes. Or like, there's been a million ways that like powers have been changed. It's like, oh, like with mutants, it's like, it's not that they always had this power; it's that they get a secondary mutation. It's like that's a thing that's established. So like, I think that's very important. Is to know when you're breaking your own rules and make it a thing within the universe, so that people don't just look at it and go, your rules don't matter, and so why should I care about what's going on in said universe? So there's my rambly answer. Is there any part of the answer I didn't address, or is that good?
And it's the part that I think is perhaps one of the trickiest lines to walk, which is explaining your rules and exposition dumping your rules. Like,
yes, yeah, you had
the
mentioned
last thing you want to happen is your character say, I am Thaddeus of planet Guplex, and this is my magical breastplate, which repels energy blasts. Like, you don't want that to happen, but with things like completely fictionalized gear, you may want to set those
That's where
parameters.
I fully went with for this creative code for whatever. I'm fully in the fictionalized
don't worry,
gear.
We'll get just other suspensions of disbelief. I'm always very enthused to listen to you.
Yeah, no, but I think my method, the first thing is, like, again, you don't need to establish all of your internal rules immediately. It's not like, oh, now they can't suspend this because they don't know all the internal rules. Just that you can't break the ones that they do know is very important, and you should have a set of them. Just because the audience doesn't know how a device works doesn't mean you shouldn't know how the device works. Very different things, because it comes across, I think, when in every single issue it works differently versus like, oh, they're going to slowly discover more things about it. Like, those are two different things. So But the way that I think that you avoid those huge exposition dumps is sometimes you're going to get a little exposition dump. It happens. And if
And
you
it
are,
doesn't have to be a
if your
bad
thing's
thing.
cool enough, it'll be good. You know, if whatever your thing is cool enough and you're not doing it constantly and it's not taking up a huge amount of space, a one-page exposition dump that's like, this device was crafted by the gods in this cool forge, and you get to see this cool forge now on the page. Like, nobody's gonna be mad about that. Nobody's
As
gonna be
a
mad
quick
about that.
tangent, I
Yeah.
feel as a prosy bitch, as a
Yeah.
verbose individual, people
Yes.
are
Yes.
so
You are.
afraid of exposition. Because it's like,
Yeah.
oh no, we don't want to just like exposit on people. We want them to experience the world. But like if you do it well, exposition is an incredibly important and useful tool in your arsenal.
If you look at some of the best, which I'll throw out Scott Snyder and Robert Kirkman as the two that you want to read, because they will have wordy, exposition-y bits, but they come in the middle of issues that are still jam-packed with interesting
Oh yeah.
things, and they will be maybe your favorite couple of pages in that issue because you'll get all this information that you've wanted, and you'll get insight into the characters or into the items or into the backstories, and it'll be like, and they're also really good at on-page text, so it'll also
Oh
just
yeah.
like a novel, it'll be like
It reads
something
well.
that's enjoyable to read, which I think is the other issue of the exposition, is that not all comic book writers are, well, great prose writers. So when they get prosy, it sometimes is like, oh, this isn't what you're good at. Like, you're better
Yeah.
at writing dialogue, and so maybe don't do that. But well done exposition can be super intriguing. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. And those are the two writers that I shout out for the
Yes.
ones
Yeah,
that
for sure.
you want to kind of
But when it
read for that.
comes to suspension of disbelief, we've talked a lot about gear and the things that you fictionalize.
Yeah.
There are also like kind of inherent parts of storytelling that require suspension of disbelief. Like, I think an easy one to go to is in your horror story, you want the character to go into the basement. Like, you don't always need to say, like, oh, the phone line was cut so they couldn't call 911. That works a lot of the time. But within a story, when you're looking at characters, what are you doing on the page to make them make sense? To help people buy in, to people... Because the other thing is, like, obviously, there are some things that you have to do for the narrative. Like, they need to go into the basement so that the killer can jump out at them from the shadows. Like, because that's fun. Assuming it's fun, even if it's not, narratively optimal.
Yeah.
But there's also things of like, oh, this character, I don't know, Aunt May doesn't know that Peter is Spider-Man. That's kind of a suspension of disbelief point there.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of times where the way that your universe works and the way that your characters work within that universe does require those kind of finer threads of suspension that don't feel like a big deal in the moment, but they can certainly build up. What do you think is the best strategy, or a strategy, or a helpful way to help ease people into your universe so it doesn't feel like they're, the common thing being, so they don't feel like when they look at Clark Kent, they're looking at Superman.
Yeah. One of the ones that's actually one of those things that has never bothered me as much as other people. Like, I think the Clark Kent Superman thing is really stupid.
Here's the thing: Henry Cavill did the funniest thing in the world, which was walking around Times Square, as himself with Superman posters all around, and
Superman shirt, literally wearing a Superman shirt. Like, well, because it's like, the thing is, like, the assumption that somebody will like see you and go like, oh, you look like that Superman, you must be that Superman, instead of like, real life, what do you do when you see somebody who looks like somebody, like, hey man, you kind of look like that slow.
Okay,
like, it's much more likely that somebody would say that. I never
see people who look like people. Like, people don't look like each other. That's my gripe.
But like, the thing, like, I think you're much more likely somebody would be like, oh, you kind of look like Superman, Clark. Maybe you should do that follow. Like, I think that's much more likely than people would just be like, you are Superman, especially with Superman in general, who I don't think I've never liked the vibe in general that people think Superman has a secret identity. It's like, why don't you just think Superman's Superman? Like, why would
I'm sorry. This is very much a tangent.
Anyway,
So when you're writing things into your book, go ahead.
Yeah. I think the most important thing, because like you mentioned there, like, how do you get people buying universe? I think the most important thing is like setting up the universe. I think setting is the most important thing to that. I think it was Jason Aaron. Is that a panel at New York Comic Con? I think it was Jason Aaron and I'm sorry for misattributing this to him, and it was a different writer. But it was talking about the difficulty of writing a lot of stories nowadays when everybody has a cell phone, because it makes things much more difficult when it's set in the modern day compared to like old times. It was like you actually had to get to somebody to tell them something. It's like why, it's so easy for a reader to think like, why don't you just text that person? And like, that's not something you can really just hand wave away. You can't just sit there and be like, this is set in our universe right now, and yet nobody's texting each other. Like, that is going to be really, really hard for somebody to believe. And so establishing your setting is really important. And, what I mean about that is like, okay, what is your setting? One, if you're doing a horror, I think that's why you see a lot of horror books are not set in the modern day.
Oh, yeah.
It's because for horror, it's so important not to have that instant ability to contact people. And so horror nowadays feels like it's either, you're doing something like The Displaced that has such a unique way of being like why text and cell phones don't matter for their situation, and it's fantastic. Or you're doing something where like they get cut off in some way, or you're going to set it in a different time. And like thinking about those things conception and setting wise, where it's like, how do we render the cell phone useless versus like just pretending people don't have cell phones, which is in our modern day going to be really hard for people to, gather,
wrap their minds around. Yeah.
Accept. I think that's incredibly important. You have to set your setting in a way where it makes sense for the story to unfold the way it is, and that can be as simple as like, okay, it's set in a sort of every man's time, and there's no cell phones in that. Like it's kind of just like a time, but we're not going to ever have people
comic
mention
book era.
Yeah, like we're not going to have cell phones be a thing, because like the worst thing you can do is have somebody like call somebody on the cell phone at the start of the story, and then 10 minutes later when all the horror starts, they're now not using their cell phone. Like, that is the worst way to present it, is to like show the thing and then not do it. So yeah, I think setting is so incredibly important to suspension of disbelief, where it's like, okay, what is this world? Because you want them to buy into your world, right?
Right.
And so if you create a world in which the problem somebody might have isn't a problem, then that's easier. If you create a world where the problem very much is still a problem, then they are going to have that problem.
And I think that you hit on something really important there with being really careful about the details up front. Like, if the first time, just to, again, go back to examples that have been, fixed or whatever time and again, if the first time you see Peter returning home after Spider-Manning, if you see him sneak in using his spider powers, you kind of set that precedent of, oh, we know that Peter's actively hiding this and, like, is doing so effectively. Whereas if you see him, like, I don't know, swinging through his window, making a bunch of noise, and, like, standing around in his room in his Spider-Man costume, that's a very different story. Like, I guess this is kind of a weird example, but I really like the way that they did it in the Spider-Man video games, where Pete, like, has his bags around the city, and you see when he transitions from Superman life to Spider-Man life to Peter life, where it's like, oh, he's changed his clothes, he's, like, covering his tracks, and it's a really good suspension of disbelief thing of, like, oh, this makes sense here. Peter has thought of this. Like, we don't have to come up with our own reasons, which I think is kind of the death of your universe, when you don't explain things, so other people have to. Where it's like, oh, in order for me to be able to buy into this, I have to fill in the blanks and do this. Because then you might start messing with your own universe. It'll be out of your control, essentially. Like, if it's like, oh, clearly Peter wears the suit under his suit, suddenly, he goes to a pool party, you're like, oh, well, how is he going to get out of this one?
No, fully agree. And that's like, I don't want to make it sound like I'm shitting on the nerds or the geeks this episode, because it's kind of sounding like it at this point. I love nerds, and I'm one of you, and I'm one of those crazy
Jay
fans.
Jay is a big lore boy, like a big into the logic boy.
I'm the guy who sits there figuring out lore shit and like filling gaps and like researching so I know like every minute point of a universe. Like, I am one of those crazy people. I am one of the people that I'm about to say to be concerned about. But like, you do not want to let the geeks fill in so much to the point where you're going to start contradicting what they have accepted as like the establishment. Like, I'll give you another Ben 10 example, because I can't do anything else. one of the biggest things that people have gotten annoyed about in Ben 10 because continuous retcons is like Kevin's powers and his backstory. In the original series, you get no explanation behind Kevin's powers. That's very important because with no explanation, a bunch of the fans decided he was just a mutant who was born, with powers with no, explanation other than he's a mutant. So when the sequel series, Alien Force, revealed that he was half alien, with his father being an alien, a lot of people went, that's a retcon, that's awful, we don't like it, we want him to be a mutant, even though he was never a mutant. But you've gotten 4 seasons without explaining anything, people jump onto that. To the point that then the sequel series decided we're going to undo him being an alien and make him a mutant so that those fans can have what they want, and actually created a contradiction in internal logic. And so it's very funny how that plays out. But this is why you don't want to leave things that open, because when you leave things open for so long, you're going to get contrary points in your fan base, and now you're not going to be able to make everyone happy, and you're going to cause big problems just by not even contradicting anything, but contradicting what people have come up with in their heads. So yeah, Kate is very right in the sense that you need to be careful in details, and you want to explain things before people have to explain things for you.
Exactly. And even on a smaller scale, if you have a fan base of 1 and this person is reading their story, your story, and they have to go, oh well, I guess it could work if it's because of this. That's not great. That's not great storytelling. You want your bases covered, and I think that one of the ways to do that is in really subtle ways, through detail, through worlds, through like visual storytelling, because we're writing comics after all, and adding in those details, because that's not something that's on your artist to do. I think it's one of the reasons that writer artists often are so fucking rad, because they have like that direct connection between, okay, this is the world I'm trying to create. This is what I can put in speech. This is what I have to say explicitly. This is what I can put in the background, essentially. So, like, if your main character drives a flying car, if in the establishing shot you see that all of the cars are like hovering instead of on wheels, great. You've established that flying cars are the norm here. So being able to do like little details like that, like you said with the cell phone, if in that first scene they're talking on the phone to somebody instead of walking next to them, you've established phones. Fuck, you're fucked. Just kidding. Kind of.
I'm sorry, I don't know why you examples. Have you seen Video Game High School?
Yes, we talked about this a long ass time ago. It was formative for both of us.
Yeah, but something that's wild about Video Game High School is I'm assuming because they made the pilot before the rest of the show. In the pilot, you see like bullies ride in on this like sci-fi bike with like these sci-fi wheels that like fly above the ground and come in.
About that.
And then there's nothing sci-fi like that for the rest of the series. And it's just one of those things where it's like, that is something that, despite how much I love VGH, it's hard to find in the world. It's like, wait, but it was sci-fi like 5 seconds ago, and now it's not. It's worse to be the opposite, but like that's there you go.
Exactly.
I don't know why
it's
you just threw that in my head there.
No, I love that theory.
This is the first thing that came into my mind when you said that.
Yeah, so paying attention to the details, being careful with what you're putting in the world, so you make sure that the things that you're putting in the world are internally consistent with the world that you are putting them in, is very important. Jay, do you have any final thoughts on suspension of disbelief and internal logic and all that good stuff?
I think it's great when you learn things as the characters learn things. One of my preferred methods of information in the comics. It's very, the easiest way I think to teach things to your audience is to teach things to your characters. And however your characters understand the world is working is how your audience should understand the world is working. And as they develop, your audience can develop too. I think that's a very nice linear way to deposit information.
That's why having characters who are not solely audience stand-ins, but who can operate as audience stand-ins is incredibly helpful. Because I think one trap
not a character that already knows everything.
Exactly. I think one trap that people fall into pretty easily is my main character doesn't know about the universe. But you can do this in other ways too. You can have your main character have a companion who doesn't know about the universe, and they're kind of that kind of wisdom figure for them.
They know about the universe, like they don't have to know about everything in the universe too, which is like a nice thing. It's like, oh, just because they are well established in the universe doesn't mean they know the wizard that they're about to meet, and then that wizard can be like, I'm Brutus the White. I don't know. And that you can learn why he has such a long white beard.
Yes. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Brutus the White. My favorite
Brutus
character.
the White.
But I think that is going to take us to the end of the creative court, unless you have more insights. Because this is your wheelhouse.
I've never had any insight.
He's out of sights,
I
actually.
rambled today, mostly about Ben 10.
Mostly about Ben 10. That is accurate. Ben 10 and also Invincible in the news.
I mentioned the Invincible breathing and like holding his breath in space thing in this episode.
You did, you're right.
Creator Corner as well. And I did Gas for The Walking Dead, so I went full like Kirkman on this as well.
Full Kirkman nerd. Nice. We love to see it. But if you want to see more, not Kirkman nerddom, but more Jason Aaron nerddom, we had our absolute fantasy football draft. Part 2, where we look at the number 2s in the series. I am, of course, Team Wonder Woman. Jay is Team Batman. And Jason Aaron's Team Superman is played by a bot. Check it out. We went through all 3 number 2s of the Absolute Universe. Full spoiler discussion, so if you aren't reading it and you want to stay caught up, you want to stay abreast to events happening in this other universe, we're tackling literally everything that comes out from that universe.
The plan is to keep doing that even as the books pile up, so it's going to be wild.
Longer and longer videos, apparently. But that's, of course, not all the content we've got for you. This coming Saturday, Jay, we've got the Strange Saturday Super Show.
We do.
You've kept this one close to the chest.
Yeah, we used to do that, but the past couple we've shared with each other. But I've once again returned to not telling you about what we're doing. And I wanted to go to one of our favorites on the podcast. Man, we have interviewed actually a little while ago. We're going to be talking about a John Layman book. We're going to be doing the first volume of Chew. For this strange
You're so right, because Jay was telling me, he's like, I don't actually know what this is about. I'm so glad it's strange. And you're right, I also don't know what Chew is about.
So Chew is about an
My
FD
guess
agent,
is that he eats things and learns about them, a la iZombie.
That is actually very similar. He gets psychic impressions from food, which I figured was more than strange enough for the Strange Saturday Super Show. But yeah, absolutely. I found this on the thing. I saw the description for the first time ever after obviously knowing about Chew, because it's a very popular book from a creator that we both really enjoy, but had never been something that I had read. Saw this concept and I went, yeah, that's weird.
That's fucking weird. John Layman appearing twice on the same Strange Saturday Super Show now. We talked about it
the first one being the interview. Yeah. So check that interview out. It was great. He talks a little bit about Chew and kind of more like not as much about the content, obviously. Otherwise, we would have known what the content was. But he talked a little bit about doing a series that ran that long and kind of what goes into that, because that's something very uncommon in the current comics landscape. But that means maybe it's real good. So we're going to dive into the first volume and we're going to tell you if it's good. But of course, we have our normal regularly scheduled Wednesday episode coming out in a week, where we have another 4-booker.
That's right.
Tell me what the 4 books are.
We're talking about Batman Dark Patterns #1, The Creep Show Holiday Special, Laura Kinney Wolverine #1, and Minor Arcana #4. But weirdly enough, that's not the only regularly scheduled programming we have happening on the Script Heroes channels.
That's true.
These days, Jay. What's
now
happening
have
on Saturday mornings?
We now have a gaming channel and a Twitch channel. And we are starting to stream Marvel Rivals. We did 2 streams this past weekend to kind of get you jump-started with some extra content.
So we can finally get to level 10.
Yes. You can find all of Katie's perspectives on Twitch, and you can find all of my perspectives of the streams on our Script Heroes Gaming YouTube channel. Both will be linked in the description on this YouTube video. But we stream Marvel Rivals every Saturday morning for about 2 hours, typically. And our goal is going to be to get to the top of ranked, and my goal is going to be to become the best group in Marvel Rivals, and I think I'm pretty damn close already.
He got 2 MVPs today.
2 MVPs
We were playing
today.
some not ranked, so we can.
So we could get to the level to play ranked at, and now we will be starting our ranked journey on Saturday. You don't want to miss out on our first time in ranked. We are a disaster, and you want to see it.
But also, hey, if you're a fan of the Script Heroes channel, do you want to team up? We're not very good and could use a full team.
Yeah. Especially if you are a comic book creator that we can, talk to about comics as we play.
Because that's what we do during ranked games, which is why we aren't good.
Listen. If we had somebody on and we were going to talk about comics, that wouldn't be ranked. But that's fine. Whatever. In any case, we are going to bring this episode to a close. There's so much Script Hero stuff you can watch now. We have playlists and channels and all that good stuff. So I really hope that you guys will check something else out after this video, because if you enjoyed this and you sat through this whole disaster class that was this episode, we have plenty of other stuff that will probably intrigue you as well. But as always, we hope to see you next week. Comic Geeks.